Welcome and get ready for today's transformation where we go from this right to this. And if you don't know already, I am Kevin, the marketing director for Stamp Anniething, and today we're coloring another cute image from the brand new Just Curious stamp set. And of course, we have here today Little Curious George and the man in the yellow hat. So we're going to start up by coloring the man in the yellow hat, and we're going to be using our skin tones E04, E11, E21, E00, E000, and R20 for his skin tone. So we're going to start with our E04, which is our lipstick natural, and I am going to color that first line right under his hat. And of course, I have yet again forgot to put on my glasses, so now they're on and we're ready to go. So I just made a quick line right under his hat, and because the hat is casting a little bit of shadow, I'm actually going to put some of my darker shadows a little bit up higher than I usually do on the ear. And I give that a little bit in the cheek there, and a little bit around his chin. And I'm going to go ahead and do in his collar, and then do a little bit in his hands as well here. So I'm going to go ahead and put all my skin tone in all at the same time. And because he's got a little bit of a nose there, I'm going to shade under his nose. And I'm going to give him a little bit of shading right under his eyebrow today as well, or his eyebrows, sorry. It's got more than one. So that's our E04 placement. So next up is our E11, and if you've colored with us before, you know these are the typical colors that we usually use for our skin tone. So I'm going to go over where I just colored and slightly beyond. Now I'm bringing it down and extending it a little bit more. And I'll connect this right here now. Now I can come down the other side of his face, or come down or come up, depending on which way I'm coloring, I guess. And go into the bridge of his nose and over top right there. And then into his neck. I'll just fill that right in. And then I'm going to go into his fingers a little bit more here. And into his hand a bit. And you know me, if I color outside the lines, I like to go ahead and use my colorless blender right away. So after my E11 is my E21. I apologize for bumping the camera there. E21 soft sun there. So here I'm going to bring it over that E11, not as much into that E04 now. I'm going to bring it down from the eyebrow. Outside this corner and down his nose. And then I'm going to bring it in through that ear, and here I'm going to start to blend. And into that cheek. And then here you can see I'm kind of connecting it up here at the side now. I'm going to spin it around to make it easier on me. And I've kind of rounded it off here. Then in off the bridge of his nose again. Oh, just there. And under his mouth and into that little curve right there. A little bit into the neck. And then I'm going to fully color in his fingers and his hands now with the rest of this E21. I'm going to go in with my E00, so this is our soft white. Now with the E00, I'm going to make my line around his eye. I'm going to make sure that I kind of make that circle and I don't fill in all that white area. I can come up just to the right hand side of his pupil. And here on this side, I bring that down. And into that right hand side of the pupil there. I'm going to come up from the chin here. And now I'm going to blend on the right side, can't speak, the right hand side of his face. That's what I'm trying to say. Go over here. Just touch up anywhere where I want, a little bit more blending. So that was the E00. So now I'm going to go in with my R20. And I'm just going to give him a slight bit of rosiness to his cheeks, but I don't want to do too much. I'm kind of just going up into that ear side and a little bit around the mouth. I'm going to blend it down a bit. Then I'm going to go in with my E000. Then this is going to help kind of blend it and soften it. Kind of get it to meld with the other colors. I'm just kind of softening out that. On his cheeks there. We'll let that dry for a second. If you ever find that it's looking a little light, just kind of let it dry. And then you can go back in after, and if you need to deepen something up. And I'm going to go back in with my E00 just to go over the top of his lip a little bit here. Just a little bit around into his face there. So that is the man in the yellow hat's skin tone for us. So now I'm going to do his hair. So his hair, I'm going to use my C's. So I'm going to use C9, C7, and C5. And he only has a little bit where we need to color his hair right under his hat there. So this is the C9, and I'm just going to add it in there. I'm going to turn him around. Add it there. That was a C9. Now we're going to go in with our C7. It's a very small base. We don't need to do too much. And then C5. And our C5, that cool gray number 5, I'm just going to blend it right through the middle there. This hair is quite dark. And that is our hair, which is the C9, 7, and 5. So next up, we are going to color his uniform. I'm going to start with so the yellows I'm going to use are Y17, Y15, Y13, Y11, and Y000. So I'm going to start with my darkest yellow, which is my Y17. So my Y17 is going to go into the darker areas. And that is going to be in everything except for those bands and obviously our little George. So I started with his hat there, and I'm gonna add this darker line here as well of that yellow into his collar on the bottom. So I'm kind of coloring everything off to the right. So anywhere where there's something to color, I'm kind of making sure that I add it onto the right hand side just to give it that depth and kind of the shadow where it needs to be. And I'll put it under his arm here as well because his arm is providing a little bit of shadow there too. That was the Y17. So next up is our Y15. So our Y15, this cadmium yellow. Kind of fun to be able to use like the yellows like this because there's, at least in my experience, I haven't been able to color many things with this much yellow before, so it's kind of fun. It's a little different. And it's also kind of easy because how often do we get a character that wears just one color of outfit from pants, hat, his whole little garb here is just all one color, so that makes it really easy for us to color. So that was Y15. So next up is our Y13. This is our lemon yellow. I'm going to bring it a little over more. You can see now I'm kind of trying to fill in his hat a little bit more. His shirt as well, making sure I go into those buttons into that pocket and where he's holding George here. So now we're using our Y11. So this is just our pale yellow. This is where we're going to start to blend a little bit more. So I'm going to come in from the left-hand side of the hat, and then I'm going to go over all the yellows that I colored. And this is where I really want to make sure that I have everything nicely blended. And at this part too, I'm going to make sure that no more white shows. Under George's little foot. Down into the man in the yellow hat's pants. You can see, pretty easy to color. So our last color is going to be our pale lemon, which is Y000. So this is where I'm going to really make sure I add in some highlight onto that left-hand side. I'm going to bring it in So here I'm just going to go over the side really, really well. Because I do want some of these to be just a little bit more pale and highlighted. Now if you want, you can go back in to touch up some little spots, add a little bit more depth. So I'm going to go back in with my Y13 a little bit into this side of the hat. Just to add that little bit more yellowy depth just in some places. And a little bit with that Y, actually that was Y13, yeah, so maybe a little bit Y11 in here again as well. So now for his black parts of his outfit, which is his hat band and his boots, and I forgot I will do his tongue. But for his hat band and his boots, we're going to do W8, W6, and W5. So that W8. So I chose the warm grays just because I thought if he's got a yellow outfit, kind of like that, as warm tone as we actually would get with a gray, that I might as well use the warm gray. So that was W8. Now I'm doing W6 and then followed by W4. And just I'm continuing over from the boots. So the boots, just doing coloring from right to left. I haven't done the sole of his boot yet. So then I'm going to use W4, that warm gray. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure I start on my light side and bring it in. Just make sure I blended it over a bit. Kind of nice and easy there. Then I'm going to go take my C9. So I'm going to 1C because the C I'm going to use on the sole of his boot. I just want to be careful that I'm using just the very tip of my C, that brush nib. Here we go. I'm going to jump back in there and do his tongue. So his tongue, I'm just going to be using E04 right along the bottom there. And I'm going to go ahead again with that R20. And R20 is going to go right over the whole thing just to blend and soften it. And there we have the man in the yellow hat colored. So now it is time, of course, for our Curious George. And our Curious George, his fur is going to be E27, E25, and E23. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the E27 where I think the darkest part needs to be. And it's going to be shadowed under his arm, under his head, into his belly where he's closest to man in the yellow hat. I'm going to frame his face. I'm going to put it in his arm, but I'm going to stay away from that outside black line. And then into his back here, in the bottom of his leg. That is our E27. So he's a smaller image because he's smaller in relation to the man in the yellow hat. So now E25 is next. So it does make him pretty easy. E25, just I'm gonna go here. Goes on the inside of where you colored that line with E27. I'm doing the outside of the rest. And lastly is our E23, and it's gonna bring everything all together. So this is our hazelnut. You can see we're in coloring on the arm there, on the inside of his belly. And again, just making sure I try to blend. I'm going to turn it around just to make it a little easier. I think he's looking pretty cute already. So for his face, we're going to be doing E53, E51, and E50. I'm going to start that right up at the top. And then I'm going to concentrate it a little bit more to this side, and I'm kind of coloring around that eye. And over to this right hand side of the ear. So I'm going to leave the left hand of his face side lighter, just so it looks like he is a little bit brighter on that side. So our next color is E51. I can start to bring that down. And start to bring it across over his nose, close to that other eye, above his lip, and under his chin, and right over here to the side. And then our E50. Our lightest color will go to finish off his little ear there. And then I am going to use it right here and soften that side of his face a bit. Now, I feel like I got a little bit into his eye there, so I am going to use my colorless blender just to make sure I push some of that white out there. So I'm going to take my E51, which was I was using as my mid-tone. I'm going to color George's, just he's got little toes sticking out there. And his one little hand right here. I'm just going to fill it in with that. Now with George and his cheeks, I'm going to use R21. So his cheeks are R21 and R20. And just put it right into there, and you don't really have that much cheek color on this side. So I'm going to keep it in there. And I'll go in with that E50 just to blend that cheek color in a bit. I want him to have nice rosy cheeks, but I also want it to blend a little bit more seamlessly here. There, I think that's looking pretty darn cute right there. So now we just got to do a little Curious George's tongue. So I'm just going to put my E04 on the outer sides there. And this time I'm going to use R21. Sorry for bumping the camera. Just making it worse. So R21, and then we'll just spin here. And we'll get it to blend just like that. And finally, we're going to use our white gel pen here. And this is going to allow us to put in those highlights that make our characters pop and come to life. So we're going to put that right into the man in the yellow hat's eyes, right over the highlights given. We're going to add a little extra right there. And then, of course, Curious George. Let's brighten up his eyes as well. And add a little dot there. And if we want, we can put just a little bit into the boot. And a little bit into the hat. And I like to kind of just wipe it with my finger to soften it a little bit. Even add a little bit of his hair right there. And again, I'm going to tap that out. And there you have it. We have Curious George, the man in the yellow hat from the Just Curious stamp set. So don't forget, if you like this video, make sure to give us a like, a thumbs up. Those are my thumbs up right there. Hit that subscription tab if you haven't already. Make sure to turn the notifications on so you never miss a video. And that is all for me today. So remember to stamp it, color it, and love it. And we'll see you next time. Have a great day.